Yeah, the great part about this is at various moments, I often think as we get later and longer into the event, it becomes, just keep an eye on watch, it becomes more intimate in a sense. That's a posh way for saying there are fewer people, but we sort of have all...
Quality. It's quality.
It's quality, yeah, thank you. The three guests here are Brendan Nelson, President of Boeing Global, Éric Martel, President of Bombardier, and Stefano Pontecorvo, I pronounced that wrong, from Leonardo. But before we get into the issue, because I know you're all deeply concerned to discuss how will aerospace shape the future of the global economy, we're going to do a couple of questions on your individual companies, because you have fascinating companies in your own right. I'd be remiss if I didn't start with you at Boeing, as everybody would expect me to. Look, we're not going to rehearse the difficulties and the issues, but I am interested in what Kelly said, your new CEO, about the change of the culture. The change of culture that he admits has to take place. Obviously, you agree to that. How's it going?
Well, look, thanks, Richard. It's interesting. I regard it a bit like us as human beings. And I say to young people that what transcends everything in life, rank, power, money, influence, looks, talent, is character. It's informed by worthwhile intrinsic virtues. And so too the character and the culture of a company and its leadership is everything. It's fair to say, I think, that over the last decade, certainly through the 2010s, I think the company in terms of culture lost its way. We have diminished trust in us, and we've had some serious lapses in performance. We're carrying an immense amount of debt. And I think one of the key things for us, and I'm paraphrasing what our new CEO, Kelly, has said, we not only have to have respect for every single one of our employees, particularly on our production lines, but we have to have a reverence for them. And he's determined that people like me need to spend more time in the factory, understand our people and understand our products.
I have no doubt, simply on the basis of duopoly, that Boeing will be around. Nobody's questioning that. Your customers want it, the industry needs it. That is not at issue. The issue is, can you get back to being fighting fit?
Yes, of course we can. And it's not going to happen overnight. You've already seen, we've announced we're shoring up the balance sheet with the equity offering and making sure we deal with our liquidity issues and also maturing debt. But we'll get through this strike. We hope that will be very soon, of course. We're working on that. And then we will progressively return to production. We're not going to rush that. I know our customers are disappointed and frustrated because they want our products, but we're going to make sure we get that production line up and running methodically to make sure we can be 1,000% confident in every aircraft that comes out of that production line. We're shedding 17,000 of our staff at the moment, about 10% of the workforce. The next phase you're going to see is some strategic changes in the company. So there will be some divestitures. There will be elements of the business we're doing now that we're not going to continue to do. We are also going to be consolidating elements within our business, and we're now methodically looking at the layers within the company. I started my life as a physician. It's a long story as to how I got here. But one of the things that happens in medicine, one of the mistakes is you prescribe one drug to fix a problem, and then you prescribe another drug to counter that drug, another drug to counter that drug, and over a period of years, what organisations and companies can do is end up with all of that. So a streamlining of the company itself, and we've got serious issues in terms of execution on programs, and we will be laser-like focused on getting them fixed.
Stefano, I look at Leonardo and I look at the range of industries that you are in. I mean, there are two hot wars. Defence spending's gone through the roof. There is no diminishing in defence spending, if arguably it's going to get even greater. So what's the Achilles heel in all of that?
There are actually two. There are more than two. There are two main ones. Speed, we're not fast enough. You can't take 5 years to bring a missile to market or to have a new product. It's simply, time has changed, the urgency has changed. Second is underinvestment. We are, all of us, nobody excluded, in the defense business. I don't know enough about the Chinese to be definite about them, but the rest of us, we're all underdimensioned.
You're all
underdimensioned. You look at the Ukraine war, it's as tragic as it is. It's a regional war, it takes place in a very limited time. In 2 years of the Ukraine war, all of us have run out of everything. Munitions, you name it, we don't have it. We are all scrambling to do it, to get up to speed, trying to invest in what we need currently, trying to understand what we will be needing, and we are at the cutting edge of us and others in the business.
But this is a bonanza time for the defense industry, as we're told.
It is a bonanza time. In fact, anything I can produce, everybody buys. That's not the issue. The issue is what's going to be needed in 5 years. Where do I need to invest, and how do I need to invest? AI, all that stuff comes into, as part of the process, it comes into rationalizing. Or do we actually know where we're going? We think we do, we're not sure.
Hold that thought.
And to make those investments, you need multi-year contracts and governments that are prepared to invest in the long term, so Leonardo, Boeing, similar companies can make the investments necessary to meet that defence demand.
I support the previous speaker.
Bombardier's case. I went to Montreal 20 years ago and did a story of Bombardier, maybe 15 years ago. I loved the company. You had lots of interesting things, ski-doos, trains, planes. And now you've just got a few planes. You've got expensive planes, but you are a one-horse race now.
Yeah, we decided 5 years ago to completely restructure the company, sold the train business. Sea-Doo happened 20 years ago. So today, we're the only company in the world that is focused on private aviation because we thought we were the best at doing that. So we do the Global, the Challenger. We have 5,500 airplanes flying around the world, and we have a significant service business according to that.
Aren't you at great risk of a shift in public perception? Already there is you're going to tell me that the pandemic showed that everybody was now wanting to fly more private because of the convenience, etc.
I will, of course. But clearly the pandemic was actually completely changed the profile. If you take our airplane today, we have 55 airplanes. They're flying about 38% more hours than they were pre-COVID. Plus, we've been delivering new airplanes.
What about plane shaming?
Significant boom. Plane shaming is an issue. Okay, I think we're all facing that. I saw that myself on flying over here the other day. So this is a challenge. But I think you were to your first question. Clearly, when you look at the challenge we have, environmental sustainability, everything, we are an industry that has a track record of innovation and reducing emission by more than 50% over the last 50 years. So
I've got news for you. I think you may have found one audience in the world, in this room, where you won't find plane shaming, because most of them in here would be liking to be on board one of your planes, or at least have one of your planes already.
Well, the problem with the plane shaming is the people who can afford to fly, who often fly for a living, are telling the 80% of humanity that are yet to get on a plane that in some way that they should not be able to do so. And that's the key challenge we've got is decarbonise the industry whilst giving access to people who just dream of flying.
Can I just 30 seconds on this?
Yeah.
Just remind everybody, and myself, beginning with myself, that the plane industry amounts for 2.5% of global emissions only. So what are we talking about?
yeah.
Right, I'll tell you what we're talking about. Now you've got onto my area. You're talking about an industry that has done a truly appalling job of getting that message out. You're talking about an industry that has successfully failed at its own messaging on that very issue.
Agreed. It's not my fault. I only produce planes for these guys, so it's their fault.
I think it's important that we continue to say the right thing. So yes, 2%, 2.5%. Private jet is 0.04%. So, but the fact that it's not significant is not an excuse to do nothing. And that's why we made a commitment and we're reducing it using sustainable aviation fuel as an example. This is something we should all collectively work together because it's working out. It's available now, but it's not available.
It's not available in anything like the capacity necessary or anything like the price that airlines would be prepared to pay without passing it on to the passengers. And nor is that likely to happen within the confines of IATA's rules.
But you would be surprised, Richard, that there's a lot of people that are willing to pay that price now. I would say when I talk to customers, when it's available, they take it. We are, as a company, taking it, for 30% of the fuel we're using every year. So, but it has to be invested, and government have to work together so that we can have the availability.
Richard, I disagree with you on the point about we haven't told the story. We do tell the story, but unfortunately, as you know, we are living in a world where a lot of people will not listen to evidence-based information that comes to them. We're 2.5% of global emissions. We're 12% of the transport sector. This industry is 4% of global GDP. We estimate that by 2050 it'll be a $9 trillion economy, the air transport sector. The work that's going on, all of us, every one of us, and Airbus, everybody, we are working very hard on this, and we'll get there. We'll get to net zero by 2050. The technology that will allow us to get there at this very moment does not exist, but I'm confident that it will do very soon.
Your problem, all of you, I would suggest, is that you are not the masters of your own destiny when it comes to many of those issues.
That's correct.
It's regulators in terms of, a good example, single European skies. It is the lowest hanging fruit to save 10% of emissions, and you can't even get a sensible ATC system in Europe at the moment.
But that is absolutely correct. Leonardo, we produce, among other things, helicopters. Our brand is Augusta Westland. I highly recommend them. In the kingdom, we fly about 200 of them. Last year in Dubai, at the COP28, we flew, we're the first ones, we flew with the Pratt & Whitney motor. We flew an AW139 with SAF. We managed to do it only in Dubai because they allowed us to do it. In Europe, we couldn't fly them. So there's a regulator. It costs 3 times, as SAF costs 3 times as much as original fuel,
right?
Yep.
Which means that you're going to have to pay 3 times if the customers are willing to pay. Does the ecological conscience of the average passenger allow you to pay 3 times?
But the reality why it's 3 times more also is there's no availability.
Exactly.
So everybody's
There is no
fighting to have it
availability.
because there's none. It's 0.0.
But I think the market would, if we start flying SAF,
Yep.
then
Okay.
it turns around, then people will start producing.
The title is, How Will Aerospace Shape the Future? We know you're going to be players. My hypothesis is you're not going to get to the position of optimum contribution to the global economy because there are so many headwinds of which you have no control.
Well, this is arguably the most complex operating environment for any business that we've had perhaps since the end of the Second World War. We went through a Cold War and everything else. The trajectory in aviation has been consistent. We had 9/11 and the drop there. We've had the drop through the global pandemic, but the trend line is consistent. Humanity needs this industry for people to see one another, their families and friends, conduct business, enable commerce, to take cultures to the rest of the world and bring the world, for example, to Saudi Arabia. And this sector will continue to grow, but our social license requires us to decarbonise. And Richard, it's about propulsion, it's about engine design and how they work. It's about the fuels we put in those engines, sustainable aviation fuel obviously being the most important and pressing need, along with other things. The design of aeroplanes themselves, the aerodynamics of aeroplanes, and the efficiency of what happens in the cockpit and then what happens in the airport. Our industry, all of us, even competitors, we are working together on the solutions. Governments need to regulate. The governments do need to say to us, right, there's a minimum amount of SAF you've got to use.
That's because you're out of the EU. If we're in the EU, you would say it's overregulated.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in the EU.
But we also
overregulated.
yeah.
But I
we also
think
need
Richard,
market.
one thing that but I think one thing that's important, we need leadership right now. We need leadership right now. There's people that can shape the world, okay? And there's
One of
people,
them's going to be elected next Tuesday.
And there's people that will tell you that everything's going to goes to drain in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years. Aviation is going to grow. Will continue to grow. We're super comfortable with that. Honeywell gave us a survey last week in private aviation that there'll be 8,500 airplanes delivered in the next 10 years. So our industry will continue to grow, but I think we need to do it responsibly.
Okay.
And we're investing there. I have 85% of my R&D budget today in sustainability.
Yeah.
That's
One
how
of
we're
the
spending our
amusing
money.
things I always find when I come to the kingdom, if I come via Dubai, I'm one of those #avgeeks. I like to, I watch the screen. And sure enough, we will leave Dubai and we will either go round Qatar or we will go round Qatar. We will never go over Qatar. And I've tried to understand why for decades. And I've had every reason from military airspace to Qatar's very busy, it hasn't got its own FIR, blah, blah, whatever. Yeah. But the reality is, in every case, your industry is being screwed by regulators or governments. Do you accept that?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's overregulated. In the EU, then you have different regulations according to what different zones you're going to. Yeah. So it's overregulated. What we need to get clear is what is the objective by the governments, and we'll work it out. I mean, the industry will work it out. Absolutely. You give me an objective which is not, nothing to do with governments, but you're talking about sustainable air mobility. There's a mock-up out here. It's a wonderful company. Either sustainable, at this point, it's either sustainable or it's air mobility. You can't have both. So you give us the objective you have. You give us a target. We'll work it out. If we can't work it, but you can't give me a target and say, okay, you got to fight the Cassius Clay and the good days, but one hand has to be behind your back. It simply doesn't work. You got to give us the possibility to work within a certain framework. You give us an ethical framework if you have to, or you give us a budgetary framework if you have to. The two together don't always work.
This is all going to require massive investment at some point. Yeah. You're going to have to build a new plane at some point. Yes, Kelly's already said so. You haven't said when yet. You've said you're not building a new plane anytime soon.
Not in the short term. Yeah, we're doing some derivative, but we're not building a new airplane in the short term. We do have an airplane going into service next year, our Global 8000. We're investing the money to do that. But as I said right now, 85% to 90% of our R&D budget goes to sustainability, and we're using AI to do that also.
What's your cheapest plane?
The cheapest is our Challenger 3500.
You can't afford it.
30.
Sorry?
20, you can't afford it.
20-some million.
20 million?
20-some million, yeah. We can talk after.
Anybody
Richard?
give me a loan? It's 20 million. Anyone had a check? And your cheapest plane?
I'm not prepared to say. I can't tell you off the top of my head, but it'll be one of our smaller ones in the 737 range.
Yeah.
We have an ATR if you want it. We'll give you a good price.
By the way, Richard, on the regulation, our industry, of course, needs to be regulated. Of course it does.
It does.
But we are over-regulated in some areas. But in response to your thing about the flight path, one of the things we're all working on is applying artificial intelligence to the real-time operation of aircraft. And we have a thing called an eco-demonstrator. It's a 777 variant, and we test all sorts of things in this plane, 30% of which we've applied to production. So, for example, multi-regional trajectory-based operations. So real-time responses in the aircraft to changes in weather and wind resistance and all of those things that ultimately impact the efficiency and fuel use of an aircraft. That's just one simple example of the many things we're all doing to improve efficiency.
AI is the buzzword for just about everything you can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, the answer is AI. Somebody will say AI. What's the most inventive use that you're using for AI?
There are two, actually. One, we've designed our new helicopter.
Your new?
Attack helicopter.
Yes.
Directly as a digital twin, using AI. The issue with using AI in a complex industry is that your suppliers also have to have the AI and the digital twin technology to do it. Otherwise, you waste time. But in this case, we were well prepared. We did it. We designed it in 4 months instead of 4 years, which averagely it takes. So that is a very concrete.
Yep.
There, you need to take AI as part of the process, not as a substitution. You got a process. Where can I inject AI into it? The second thing is predictive maintenance. You build a helicopter, you build a plane, you build a missile, you build whatever, the radar, whatever you build. All the pieces are in there, and so you know exactly on this date, at this hour, on this time, on this helicopter, on this plane, I need to change this piece, and it has so much tolerance. And so you can do a better job. But that, again, goes through trained people who understand the process, people who are not scared of Taylorism, of being substituted, and people who are trained to do a better job using a tool, because that is what AI is for us.
But you're making an important point here. You need to fit it in, and we're doing about 6-7 projects right now at Bombardier to do like parts forecasting and service. We have millions of parts possible to be called anywhere in the world at any moment. So the forecasting is very complex. We've made significant improvements. So that's one. We're doing digital twins also to substitute and replace testing. Some very complex testing that could be accelerated So,
Because then, excuse me, on that, that's important for all of us, because with a digital twin, you can use extreme circumstances. You can test your
Absolutely.
your plane.
A digital-
in extreme twin.
digital twins.
You can digitally test your airplane.
Yeah.
And generally, it's the same thing,
Yeah.
without risking the life of the pilot or the passengers. So that is, and without risking your money also.
Yeah. If
So
you-
that is extremely good.
Yeah,
Really.
if you just think, by the way, we're being cautious about the introduction of AI. We don't want to get caught up in the hype. We want to focus on the substance and just carefully introduce it. But to illustrate the point that we're all making, in Australia, 3 years from conception, design, build to first flight, we Boeing in Australia have built a AI-powered autonomous military aircraft. It's subsonic. It's 38 feet long, 30 metres long. It will have a module. It has a module in the nose. We did 2,000 digital twin flights before we actually flew the aircraft. We've now flown it as twins. We've linked it up with a Super Hornet, and we've done 110 flights. Now that has all been made possible by the application of AI to the development of autonomy in an advanced resin-infused manufacturing.
When you're
capability.
introducing the AI component, is it sort of flagged as AI? Do you know what I mean?
No, it isn't.
Or,
It isn't. It's
or is it just,
you know,
just part of now of the process? We've got this new piece of software.
Yeah. No, actually, that's exactly it. You got the new piece of software, and you got to learn to use it. We have, Leonardo was lucky enough, the previous manager was smart enough to invest in the third most powerful supercomputer in the world after NASA and Japan Aerospace. So it's become part of how we live, and it eases your life and it helps you out.
Yeah.
So it's flagged as, hey, you've been doing this, keep doing this, add this part. You don't know how to do it, I'll teach you how to do it. And you convince people and you bring them along.
But I think
when the helicopters guys when the plane guys saw that the helicopter guys were ahead, they're going to follow up. Like the farmer next. That's how it works.
I think you need
they
to see it
know
as a
it.
new tool. It's a new tool in your toolbox that is there that
Right.
you didn't have before.
I'll
You
give
need to
you
use it at the right time.
Yeah, and I'll give you 2 examples. So I'm not the smartest person at Boeing. I hope I'm not the dumbest. But I looked at the instructions that our workforce has, the mechanics, in actually on the production line making the planes. I looked at them and I thought, my goodness, what does that mean? Then we used AI to convert it into a simpler language. Even I could understand it. The other thing is, as we all know, if you take the inside cladding off a plane, you've got thousands of wires and bundles of wires, and I look at it and think, who on earth designed all that? How long did it take? We apply AI to it, and we've considerably reduced the amount of time that it takes to design where those wires are going to go, how they're going to be bundled, how they're going to be placed in the aircraft to increase the safety, the quality,
Right.
the efficiency, and reduce our costs.
Last question,
Yes, sir.
or thereabouts. When do you think we will have a plane? We know it can fly itself, but that we will have a passenger plane that will fly itself. No pilot at the front.
Let me ask you a question. Would you fly on one? When people are ready to fly, we'll be ready. People are not ready to fly. They're not ready to take a robocab, whatever.
Yeah. I would agree. It's
Elon
not a question
says.
of technology right now. We could do it, but
Yeah,
it's a question
the technology
of
is there.
acceptance.
Would you take a plane without a pilot? No.
Well,
So when people are ready, we'll be ready. That's your question. That's your answer, as concerns me.
All right.
the answer, by the way, the answer to your question is essentially now the future is here. We have a fully autonomous air taxi that we're going through the process now, WISC it's called, going through the process of certification with the FAA at the moment. And by the end of this decade, we expect that autonomous air taxi will be flying. But like everybody else, I don't care, and I have absolute confidence in autonomy. It's a safety thing and all that. But I can tell you, Richard, I'm not going to be getting on a plane unless there's a couple of people at the front of it.
We are already flying cars. No, I wouldn't take a plane.
Sorry?
Unless it was built by Leonardo, I wouldn't take a plane. Of course, I love my colleagues. Actually, I hope he has success because we are their suppliers and they're good to us.
Yeah.
We are already flying cargo. I don't consider myself cargo. Maybe my wife does, but I'm not cargo. I wouldn't fly as yet. And I agree with you. He builds the best planes in the world.
Right.
And so he knows.
Just quickly, a quick hands up. Today, hands up in this room, Who would fly on a... Bearing in mind these gentlemen have told you it's perfectly safe, magnificently safe, wonderfully safe. It's been tested. It's been twin tested. Who would fly on a plane without a pilot at the front?
It's Boeing. It's Boeing's plane.
He works for Boeing, huh?
Who would not?
There you go. There's your answer.
Who's in Saudi Arabia and doesn't want to answer?
You know, the truth,
30%.
shedding away everything.
Yeah.
There is not the business case for an autonomous plane. I mean,
Yeah.
they're doing it.
Absolutely.
There is not the business case for an autonomous business case for autonomous flying stuff, except for drones,
Yep.
which bring cargo. All of us do that already, but people not yet.
Why do we still love flying?
To get from A to B. To get from A to B is the fastest way.
Well, Richard, you need to do a rerun of Love Actually. You need to watch Love Actually again, the film, and look at all the joy people have coming off a plane into an airport. Not all.
See, I always said that Sydney Airport, the first time I went to Australia, Sydney Airport, I think, is not so much now, but I think back in the early 90s when I first went there, was both the happiest and saddest place in the world. The happiest because you were seeing people greeting people they hadn't seen for decades, and the saddest because they were saying goodbye to people that they would never see again, arguably, parents, family relations.
But, people want to be connected, Richard. And I think that's the reason why, airplane will be around. We need to be able to move around the world. The world is getting smaller and smaller. So we need to find a way to do that. But, respecting, the environmental constraint we have.
Yeah. And Richard, look, as I said, 80% of humankind hasn't flown. We kind of take it for granted. We grizzle about it at times, except, of course, we're on a Boeing plane. But people, young people who just dream of it. I met a young girl here in the Kingdom who has cerebral palsy. She's 7 years of age. Her dream is to fly. And we are all in the business of allowing people to do that. The US-China relationship is not in the best shape, as we know. I have responsibility for working with China, the second biggest commercial aviation market in the world. And I say to the Chinese, through all of the noise, our ambition has to be that Chinese people can fly to see their family, their friends, conduct business, enable commerce, take China and its culture to the world and bring the world to China. That's why it's important.
One place in the world you've not been to, you want to go to or would like to go back to and see again?
Australia.
What?
Australia.
Oh, that was easy. Ambassador?
Bruny Island, Tasmania, Australia. Oh, all right, I'll go for a non-Australian. The city of Ypres, which is in Belgium, it was the site of one of the most longest and tragic battles of the First World War.
Maybe, Richard, one thing that's important, and we see people, how they react. After COVID, when airlines were grounded all around the world and couldn't fly, that's what had an impact on our business. People wanted to move around and go see their family, their kids. And private aviation has exploded because of that.
The one place you want to go?
Tokyo, Japan. I love it.
That's three good answers. Ladies and gentlemen.
Unless it's Riyadh.
Oh, please. Please. Our panel, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Becky.